Escape. To DOS.
Welcome to part 4 of The Purge. This is where it all began. A lot of computers, 15 to be exact, along with 8 extra motherboards. You and I had a good look under the hood, and then we came to this conclusion. We listened to some music, and we had a couple laughs, and then we electrified the motherboards, and they all came to life. We know what we've got, we know what we don't want, and now let's get into it. Starting with number 15. I had a look at this and I realized that's just a regular ATX connector. There's nothing special about it, so let's give it a test. But first, I needed to find out what was lurking under that heatsink. And it's the ubiquitous 866 MHz Pentium 3. I attach my power supply from the test bench, and it's just connected to the motherboard, not to any of the peripherals. And here we go with a first power up. Clicking the button. Oh, look at that. Well, that's good news for this motherboard. The power supply didn't do any damage. I desoldered and tested all the major components, and nothing's wrong with it that I can find. So I need another power supply so I can pair this one with the other GX and hopefully sell or trade it for something that better suits Escape to DOS. Let's look at number 14. The first of the beige cases, and this one actually had a P3 500 MHz slot 1 processor on the AX63 Pro A Open motherboard. This machine has the standard ATX style case with the typical soft power on momentary switch at the front of the case. But I'm going to get a surprise when I look at the following machines. Anyway, before we get there, so I just pulled out the things that I don't want in there, which is the network card, which phooey, and the lackluster Creative 4810. Moving on to lucky number 13. This has a Pentium 4 board tucked into this case, and it's going to give me a surprise I was not expecting. My original plan was to replace the P4 boards in these machines with something that I prefer, which is like a Pentium 3 or Pentium 2. But what I didn't realize is that some of these cases are in that transition period. They were designed to accommodate AT or ATX. When I made the first video, I pushed all the power buttons because I wanted to see if these were ATX or AT power switches. And everything except for the IBM Pentium machine and the Fortiva 5486 had what appeared to be momentary switches for soft power on. The AT style switch actually has the mains power running, just about an inch from your fingertip, hopefully not your sweaty fingertip. Has anyone ever been electrocuted while turning on an AT style computer? I kind of doubt it, but maybe you know. Regardless, the soft power on switch eliminates that because it only uses a tiny voltage. At this point, I have pulled out the power supply in this case, and this thing's a toy. It is so lightweight. That goes into the emergency only pile. And the screws holding down the motherboard actually have the non-conductive washers on them. That's fancy. So when I disassembled these cases, I did it out of order, unfortunately. So the pile of peripherals and cards and cables and screws and whatnot is going to vary from machine to machine. As you can see, the pile of IDE cables is starting to increase in the back. When I first started this hobby, as LGR puts it, I think more obsession, I was having a hard time finding anything that was beige, especially beige DVD drives. I found a local ad for someone selling some, and I ended up getting a box because they gave me a deal on it. So I already have enough, but now I've got an extra 14. So this is the switch I was mentioning. This switch is kind of ridiculous in a way. It's clunky, it's noisy, it has high amp contacts on it. There's no need for that with such a small current running through the soft power. It sounds just like an AT switch, but it does not latch. So this will be extremely easy to modify and put an AT power supply in there, and it's 2 screws, and out comes the old switch, and in goes the proper latched AT switch. The metal plate inside uses the standard brass screw-in standoffs, so that makes it easy just to reposition everything. You drill a new hole, you tap it, and you put in your standoff, and away you go. It's easy enough just to make a new backing plate and accommodate the keyboard port, and then you have yourself an AT case. At this point, I am pulling out the P4, the first of the P4s to come out of these cases. So long. Maybe somebody will enjoy this at a later date. Next thing I remove from the case is the zip drive. I don't have any zip drive discs, so I can't even test if it works or not. But who knows, maybe someday I'll stumble across a box of zip drive discs. So this is the beginning of the end of Series 1, pulling off all the labels, removing any evidence of what used to be inside these cases. I've got a stack of boxes with all kinds of goodies in them that we're going to look at in some following videos, and then we're going to get to Series 2. I'm going to take my Frankenstein machines and I'm going to transplant their hearts into these beautiful beige cases. I don't know why I didn't take out that 3.5 drive. It is an eyesore. It is so yuck. Goodbye, number 13. Moving on. Inside number 12 is the Intel desktop board. One of 3. There was one in number 10, and there was also another one that was in the pile of motherboards. I like these cases. I like them a lot. They're simple, and I will be replacing those screws with thumb screws, and that'll make life a lot easier. It's just a little bit dusty inside. I'll still have to clean all these cases anyway, but yeah, out comes the hard drive. One of a dozen that I'm going to pull out of these machines. Next is the process of getting the power supply out. There are plenty of connectors, as well as these IDE cables and the floppy cables. And they're all of different lengths, which is absolutely great. There's nothing more annoying than trying to set something up with a slightly short cable. These are all welcome additions to my collection, that's for sure. Alright, the 4-pin connector, out it comes. And this thing is not a toy. You can immediately feel the weight difference. Power supplies can fail in a variety of ways, and sometimes they destroy your motherboard, so I much prefer to use something that has some heft to it when you're dealing with these older power supplies. Yeah, it's in beautiful shape. It's clean, it's shiny, works 100%. There's even some RAM in it, so whoever gets this thing, I hope you enjoy it. At this point, it's probably sitting on the shelf right now waiting to be bought. Or maybe somebody already bought it, who knows. I probably could have sold these things if I'd tried long enough, but, you know, what's the point? I kind of like the idea of someone walking into the Value Village and finding old computer parts as opposed to the clock radios and things you usually find. January 2004. And these anomalies. Maybe they'll come in handy at some point. Let's hope. But next thing to do, remove that 12. And, more importantly, get that terrible P4 tag off this thing. I'll have to come up with some kind of case badge at some point because that's got to go. I'm not advertising for them anymore. Goodbye. Number 11. Not my favorite of the beige cases. It has the gills on the side there. It's kind of like a fish face case. But somehow I didn't even notice this 3.5 floppy in there. It says audioplusd.com on it. So I'll have to investigate that later. At the moment we have bigger fish to fry. This is an ATX case, just straight up ATX. It feels like it's made out of tin foil in comparison. It's about half the weight of the previous case. Really, the only thing going for this case is the fact that it's beige, because everything else about it is disappointing. It's that time again to pull off the labels and to end an era. Goodbye, Series 1. We're drawing you to a close. Oh, I'm trying. Come on. Come on. Come on. Get her off. One piece. This time let's get it in one piece. Nice. It's no longer machine number 11. It's going to be called Fish Face from now on. And it's not going to have an Asus board in there, I doubt. Well, who knows? Maybe it will. But regardless, I'm not advertising for Asus anymore. So, next on the list is one of my favorites, number 10. Just like number 12, this has got the Intel desktop board that is going to be removed. What I didn't mention with number 12 is that it has the same strange ATX switch as number 13. So that means that with minimal modifications, I can put a 386, I could put a 486, I could put a Pentium 1 inside this thing. And, oh, it's such a tough choice. You know, do I have a 386 in one? Do I have a 486 in the other one? Do I have the one with Voodoo 3? Do I have the other one with Voodoo 2? Oh, I can't decide. But that just means we have lots of things to look forward to in Series 2. In this machine, there's a nice collection of cables. They are just what you want. I kind of like these short floppy cables too. Sometimes those are just perfect. And oh geez, another SATA cable to throw in the pile. And out comes the Sparkle power supply. These things are a good weight. Okay, so out the board comes, no longer to live in this case. This is the third of the Intel desktop boards, and I've already boxed that up and donated it as I speak right now. And I'm going to remove the USB headphone jack bracket, or whatever you want to call it. And most importantly, we have to remove the Pentium 4 sticker. Whatever ends up in this case is definitely not going to have a Pentium 4. One of my subscribers, Clint, was expressing how really hard it is to find these old beige cases, and he made it very clear to me that, yeah, I was damn lucky that I found these things when I did. Moving on to case number 9. If you'll remember, this was the surprise case that we found a Voodoo 3 lurking inside. What a fantastic surprise that was. I had no idea that I would find anything that cool inside any of these machines. This case, I like this case. It's plain, it's simple, and it's not made of that flimsy metal. Sticker comes off. So that's it. It's no longer number 9. We'll decide what to call it at a later date. Something I didn't notice when I did the Under the Hood video is that this motherboard, though it's a P3 motherboard, doesn't have any ISA slots. I was just so blindsided by finding the Voodoo 3. Oh my god! That I didn't even look at the rest of the board. I even confused it for being a P4 and I put it on the pile for the donations. It wasn't until I started doing the voiceover for this video that I realized what I'd done. The speaker on that thing is enormous. Next, out comes the network card. Throw that on the pile. And start disconnecting all the power connections. Add to my pile of screws, and you can never have enough of these screws. Oh, that's a nice weight. Next thing is all of the IDE cables and the floppy cable as well. I pulled that one out. And this case, formerly called number 9, is just like 10 and 12. It has the same kind of peculiar AT momentary switch, which can easily be replaced with a proper latching AT switch. And I say easily because I've modified newer cases before to accommodate an AT-style latching switch, and it's sometimes difficult to get it to engage correctly. It takes a bit of shimming and fiddling to get it to work right every time. So I'm going to pull this one out of the case, and hopefully I can trade it for something earlier. And for some reason it was labeled a P3400, but when I took off the CPU cooler, I find that it's an 800 megahertz, the 800 EB chip, which is a welcome surprise. Unfortunately, this sticker did not come off clean. It's a little dissatisfying. Now above that, you can see the Creative 52 times CD-ROM on the Mike Tech channel. The other day he was talking about how the older 2 times, 4 times Creative drives are going for insane prices on eBay, and so are these 52 times ones. I saw something for about $100. Another 3.5 drive, Panasonic. I've never had any problem with these ones. This is what it looks like with just the PC Wizards label on there. That is going to get replaced. And this backing plate, it has 2 screws that hold it onto the case. It also appears to be able to take the standard backing plate that just has the press fit. But if I need to make my own plate with the keyboard port, that'll be really easy. Just make a plate with the keyboard port and put 2 screw holes in, and we're done. So let's throw it on the turntable. Voila! Perfectly good board. I just wish it had ISA slots. Next on the list is number 8. This is the second of only 2 upright cases I'm going to leave the motherboard in. This box has the QDI motherboard in it, and it will take 1000 megahertz chip or higher, so I'm very excited to see what kind of performance I can get out of this board. Also, it does have onboard sound, and it's got a game port on there, so we'll have to see if there's any conflicts with the Sound Blaster card, for instance, if I plug it into the ISA slot. This case has the proper soft power on switch at the front, the momentary switch, so it's already perfectly suited for a Pentium 3 ATX powered motherboard. So I'm just going to get the cabling out of the way so we can have a good look at that QDI sticker. And here we are. Another thing that was unexpected, this is an A-Open CD-ROM. I might have to pair that with the A-Open motherboard. So this is the one that confused me. I thought it might be a P4 board at first because of that Celeron 900, but it was the Celeron 900 megahertz chip that's in this. But I'll probably pull it out and put something else in. So off with a number, off with a tag, and I think I'm going to pull that last sticker off the bottom too, because that's just making the front of it look terrible. These Microsoft stickers are impossible to get off. They really used a powerful adhesive, so yeah, it never comes off clean. It's always a fight. So anyway, I'll make that look better later. Down the list to number 7. This one had all kinds of personal files on it and whatnot, which have since been removed. It's not as bad as the fish face case, but it is, it's not my favorite, but whatever, it is fine. These things are made pretty sturdy, and I like the fact that it comes apart as it does with the 3 pieces. That happens very quickly. I forgot that I left that CD sleeve in there. Have to pull that out. This one had 3 different hard drives. There's the removable hard drive on the top, and then these 2 on the bottom. Alright, and out comes the first of the hard drives. Next, I speed this up. Out comes the video card. That's the ATI. And next, I'm going to pull out the drives in the top. That's the removable drive that I snapped the handle off of. I just assumed that it wasn't locked. You know, whoever locks those things? Another beige CD drive, and time to take out that power supply. And once again, until you actually feel the thing in your hand, it's hard to tell exactly how heavy it's going to be. And this thing is a silly little toy. This goes on the emergency only pile with the other one that was just as light. At least the wires on this one are the proper gauge. They're just as thick as the normal power supplies. Oh, another USB card. So the last bits to clean up, there are cables to remove. IDE cable to start with. Standard size. Throw it in the pile. The smaller IDE cable. Slightly smaller. Very yellow. And the floppy drive cable. Out that comes. It's got the proper twist in it. Okay. And as this is an ATX case, it has the USB header on the front of it. So I am just going to remove the screws from this motherboard, and it will never live in this case ever again. And this is the 8-bit board. Too bad it's not a P3 board. I would have liked to have an 8-bit P3 board, but it's not to be. And it's got the proper Intel CPU cooler on there. So, that's it. No longer number 7. And I think I'm going to label this one as an empty ATX. Well, we're down to the last of those beige cases. Number 6 had the surprise P4 with an ISA slot in it, which I didn't think I would ever find in the wild. In most cases, if you see a P4 with ISA slots, it's one of these motherboards that's designed specifically for industrial applications. The old machinery still requires the ISA card controller, so thus they need a computer that has ISA slots. Maybe they were trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone with this motherboard, where it could be used for industrial application by soldering in an ISA slot, or it just sold to the home consumer market, because we were all expected just to take our ISA stuff and throw it in the garbage and never look back. And to this day, they are still producing motherboards which have ISA slots, and they run either Pentium 4 or faster processors, due to the fact that this older machinery requires these ISA cards. And I know this because I was considering buying one of these boards because I assumed I would never get my hands on anything vintage and that everything had been thrown into the e-waste. But if you look long enough, you'll eventually find what you want. Well, here we go. Unbadging, removing the 6. So long Series 1. I like this case. It looks good. And at a later date, we're going to examine this MS6391. I'm going to solder in an ISA slot. I'm going to put a Sound Blaster card into this thing. And we're going to see exactly how well it works. Moving on to number 5, the silver case. I decided that I'm going to just donate this one because, it doesn't really do it for me. Maybe somebody will find it interesting. In part 2 of this series, I could not get this thing to post. And because there was 15 machines, I decided just to move along and wait until this moment to give it another try. So what I did was I pulled out the video card and I put in a known good video card that I just witnessed working only moments ago, and then I hit the switch. Fingers crossed.
There you go.
It
works.
So I know that the motherboard works, so it was clearly the video card.
This card will not start.
So the first thing I try is cleaning off the contacts on that AGP card. I sprayed the AGP slot on the motherboard, put it back in, sloppily try to start the computer up. Forget that the power supply wasn't turned on, and finally, howls into life.
Oh, there we go.
So good news.
Cool.
This ATI AGP card is still just fine. Functions just great. So keep that in mind if you're having these kind of problems. A garage is definitely not the best environment for computer electronic equipment. And by the way, you don't need to spend all that extra money on deoxid, which is like nearly $50 for a 5-ounce can, and then lose most of it because of the poorly designed nozzle, which makes a mess everywhere. A regular $10 can of contact cleaner will do an adequate job. Now, it doesn't have the lubricants, but whatever, it still does the job. So that does it. That wraps it up. That's all the stuff I wanted out of the computer, and the rest is currently being donated, and maybe somebody's already bought it. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out someday. I didn't put that on there because I was looking for a thank you. That's not my intention. I just thought maybe somebody would find it interesting where this stuff came from, because I know I would. So there's one last look at it. So that takes us down to the bottom of the list. The last machine, the Blue Millennium machine. I decided that I am not keeping this one. I'm also going to let it go. But just like the previous one, I'm going to gut all this stuff out of it, especially that creative drive. That is going to stay in my collection. And the big lump in the front, and the way that it's kind of an upside down case, and it's kind of awkward to deal with. Definitely not my cup of tea, but somebody might be using it right now. Next, I'm going to remove the power supply, because this is the one that made like a firecracker. And I'm pulling out the Rage 128 card, and especially the Creative 52 Times. And this one has the curious green label on it. I have no idea why that's on there, but yeah, there it is. So I labeled the bad power supply just so I don't fry anything, forgetting which is which. So we have one more look at the Pentium 4 inside this case. And I stuck one of my stickers in there, and hopefully they don't tear that off. And maybe the person who gets this case will be interested in the origins of this peculiar looking machine. Now, of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And one of my subscribers made a comment that they thought the case was awesome. So I'm going to spin it on the turntable one last time for Andre Paicho. But before we do that, of course, we have to remove the branding. Goodbye, Series 1. So, to wrap up the Purge, number 3, I'm going to pair with the other Optiplex machine. Number 2, I'm going to pair with another IBM machine I have and hopefully trade all 4 of those. And number 1, we're going to do a deeper dive into that at a later date. So next we made some boxes. So everything got carefully placed into the bin, and away it went. Thus ends Series 1. I invite you all to stick around for Series 2, where I'm going to transform all of those empty cases into fantastic retro machines. But just before we do that, we have this. I've been collecting these for a while, waiting for the right time to dig in. Just to change things up a little bit, we're going to deal with the content of these boxes over the next few videos, and then we'll get into Series 2. Oh, and I almost forgot. The Coast module showed up.